A judge in Wisconsin has been arrested and charged for allegedly obstructing ICE agents. Judge Hannah Dugan is accused of helping an undocumented immigrant avoid arrest. Now, according to court documents, federal agents arrived to our courtroom to detain a Mexican immigrant just over a week ago. Witnesses say they saw Dugan direct the man to leave her courtroom through a private door. He was later taken into custody. Joining us now is CNN senior law enforcement analyst Andrew McCabe. Andrew, I've heard you say that this incident should never have happened. Explain why.
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of different ways that this thing went wrong. And I should say, first of all, I don't believe that the law enforcement officers here did anything inappropriate. It is maybe shocking for some people to realize, but people do get arrested at the courthouse periodically. It doesn't happen every day, but it is a place that you can know someone where you know someone's going to be there at a particular time. And you can do it in a way that's safe because they've already come through a metal detector. Now, those arrests are usually required to take place in the public spaces, the hallways outside the courtrooms, and not to interrupt the courtroom proceeding. But it sounds from the complaint like that's exactly what the law enforcement officers plan to do here. Whether or not the judge intentionally obstructed the proceeding and intentionally concealed this man from arrest, those are the offenses she's been charged with, will come down to determining her intent. But there are a bunch of witnesses in this complaint who will certainly testify on behalf of the government as to what they saw her do. So it won't be a question so much of did she or did she not walk these people back into a private hallway. It'll be more, what did she intend by doing that?
Okay, so let's stay in this space here and let's extract the politics. Let's take the Trump of it and the mass deportation and all of that out of it. I know you say you have to get to intent, but how strong, based on the complaint, do you think the case is?
I think it's fairly strong, Victor. As I said, there's a number of witnesses here who perceive these events in real time. They've reported what they saw to the agent who's put that into the complaint. There's a bunch of law enforcement officers who were there who listened to the things she said, who will testify about how she reacted negatively to the discovery that there was law enforcement outside of her courtroom. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence there. But it'll come down to a jury to determine whether or not they think the judge intentionally tried to conceal this person or get him away from law enforcement. So it's not a slam dunk, but it's also not it's not an unreasonable complaint. There's plenty of evidence in the complaint to get you beyond the probable cause phase, which is where we are right now.
And then after the arrest, soon after, the FBI Director Kash Patel posted an announcement of sorts on social media. The Attorney General Pam Bondi went on Fox News and called the judge deranged. I mean, the pedestrian question is, why would they do that? What would be the value of that? But I wonder, does that damage the case in some way?
It should. I mean, I think when you start looking at how the judge was treated after the events that led to the charge. So where and when and how she was arrested, and the fact that she was arrested at the courthouse rather than her own residence, the fact that she was placed in a jail cell for hours before her arraignment was called in the court later in the afternoon. These things are unprecedented. Typically, upstanding members of the community who have no criminal history and aren't accused of a violent act are allowed to self-surrender at the time of their arraignment. The fact that they did not offer that courtesy to her and instead went out of their way to treat her harshly, I believe is an act of performative cruelty on behalf of the Department of Justice, which is not the way any Department of Justice should be acting. Then their conduct in going directly to the media and spiking the football over this arrest of a member of the judiciary, also a departure from policy, totally unnecessary, and I think inappropriate by an attorney general and an FBI director.
Andrew McCabe, thank you.
For more legal perspective, I want to bring in now former Miami-Dade County Court Judge Jeff Schwartz. Great to see you. So Attorney General Pam Bondi says no one is above the law and accuses the Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan of helping an undocumented immigrant evade arrest. So in your view, is this arrest tantamount to the allegation?
I think there's a probable cause finding that is going to have to be made. I think that what happened here is that the DOJ knew they could not go to a grand jury and obtain an indictment during the 1 week period that I think that they procrastinated over this. They decided to go with a warrant. I think the worst part about this is that they arrested her at the courthouse. They perp walked her through the courthouse. This was meant as an intimidation technique and to embarrass her. Okay, instead of going to her home that morning and arresting her at her home. Now, is there probable cause here to have arrested her in the first place? There might well have been. I wasn't there. Everybody has their perspective of what occurred and why she let that person go out the side door from the jury. But that only dumped him into the hallway where she knew those agents were. So I'm not sure she was trying to help him escape. It is possible she just didn't want the arrest in front of her courtroom where everybody was gathered in the hallway. And I can understand that.
So this very public arrest of the judge, is the Trump administration sending a message to judges or to the masses?
I think she's sending a message to judges that's passed on to the masses. And that is, you're not safe in court. If you're an illegal alien or an illegal immigrant and you are in court, you have to worry about being there. Now, that interrupts the flow of the criminal justice system because they're not going to show up as witnesses. They're not going to show up as victims. They're not going to show up as defendants. And now the whole system starts to break down. As far as judges are concerned, they're being forced in a way to cooperate. It is pretty standard for judges not wanting people arrested in their courtroom. I don't think they're going to back off of that. And I think that in essence, in a lot of places, you're not allowed to arrest people inside the courthouse, whether you're a Fed or whether you're a local police officer. They want these things to take place outside of the courthouse itself. And I have a feeling that that's going to be a part of the confrontation that's going to take place in the future.
The Justice Department on Friday announced criminal charges in 2 separate cases involving judges as the Trump administration focuses on judges' conduct relating to immigration enforcement. A Wisconsin judge was arrested and charged in federal court Friday for allegedly helping an undocumented immigrant avoid arrest. Judge Hannah Dugan faces 2 charges for obstruction and concealing an individual from arrest outside her courtroom. A statement was released on behalf of Judge Dugan saying she will, I'm quoting now, will defend herself vigorously and looks forward to being exonerated, end quote. Also on Friday, a former New Mexico judge and his wife were arrested for allegedly tampering with evidence related to the federal investigation of a Venezuelan national. CNN correspondent Julia Vargas-Jones has more on all of this. Julia, walk us through what happened.
Well, Fred, it all started with a tip back in January that undocumented migrants were living on a judge's property in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and in possession of firearms. That home belonged to the former county judge Jose Luis Cano and his wife Nancy Cano. Authorities alleged that, in court documents, that one of the people living on the property was Christian Ortega Lopez, that Venezuelan national who they say is a member of a gang called Tren de Aragua. In the complaint, there are multiple photos and videos of this migrant who appears to be holding, in a shooting range, holding handguns or assault-style rifles. In different of those images you see there, investigators say that in those photos, that's how they identify tattoos, clothing, and other hand gestures that they say are commonly associated with Tren de Aragua, saying that that provided strong evidence of his potential connection to the gang. Judge Cano denies ever knowing of the possible gang affiliation, writing in a letter to the court, "Let me be as crystal clear as possible. The very first time I ever heard that the men could possibly have any association with Tren de Aragua was when I was informed of that by the agents on the day of the raid." But federal authorities also claim that the judge admitted to smashing a cell phone with a hammer because it could have had photos of Ortega Lopez holding firearms, and that his wife, Nancy, consulted with the alleged gang member over how to delete Facebook posts. Judge Cano is now charged with tampering with evidence, while his wife is charged with conspiracy to tamper with evidence. We've reached out to their attorney for comment. Judge Cano resigned in March after the case first came to light. Fred, in the New Mexico Supreme Court ordered then for him to never run for judicial office in the future. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that this is part of her effort to go after judges seen as hindering this administration's immigration policy.
All right, Julia Vargas Jones, thank you so much.